Good morning or afternoon or evening, whenever you're deciding to watch this video. It's me. I'm back again with another read along for you. I'm going to read you another fun story from They Lost Their Heads by Carolyn Betcha. Okay. This one is about Abraham Lincoln, and it's called From the Cradle to the Grave, Another Grave and Another Grave. So we'll probably figure out why it's called that. All right, Abraham Lincoln, President. A few days before April 14th, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln had a bizarre dream. He was in the East Room of the White House, where a large crowd had gathered beneath the room's ornate crystal chandelier. Heads were lowered in prayer. The only sound was the shuffling of feet kicking up dust from the faded rug. He pushed his way through the throng of people. As he got closer and closer, he realized there was something in the center of the room. It was a corpse. Dead body. Lincoln turned to one of the mourners and asked who had died. The mourner replied, "The president. He was killed by an assassin," which, if you know the story of Abraham Lincoln, he was murdered while he was watching a show. Anyway, on April 14th, 1865, that dream came true when John Wilkes Booth shot President Lincoln during a play at Ford's Theater. Lincoln died the next day. Did Lincoln predict his own death? Perhaps. But it didn't take a psychic to know that his life was in danger. After his unpopular decision to emancipate slaves, along with the deaths of 620,000 soldiers during the Civil War, Lincoln had numerous death threats. With so many plots to kill him, sorry, I lost my place. With so many plots to kill him, it is no wonder that his body would continue to get its fair share of action even after his death. The first step in his afterlife adventure began just as he had dreamed. His embalmed body was laid out in the East Room. So, I don't know if you can see it very well, but that's a picture inside the White House. Okay, Lincoln's funeral train traveled through 180 cities in 7 states. Can you imagine your body being displayed for that long? I mean, think about now how long it would take to travel through 7 states. Back then it was probably by horse and buggy. So how long would that take? Okay, nearly every city that greeted him shrouded their buildings in black bunting. Funeral dirges played and church bells rang out. Lincoln was then placed in a temporary tomb in Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield, Illinois, while his posh tomb was being built. When it finished in 1871, Lincoln was placed in a white Italian marble sarcophagus in the main chamber room. After all this moving around, Lincoln should have rested in peace. Such was not the case. The trouble actually began hours before Lincoln's assassination. At 11 a.m. on April 14, 1865, Secretary of Treasury Hugh McCulloch burst into Lincoln's office and warned the president that they had a serious problem. The crime of counterfeiting, or making fake money, was out of control. Counterfeit rings were growing at such an alarming rate that half of the currency in the North was fake. If people didn't trust money, then they wouldn't use it, and the whole economy would collapse. McCulloch's solution was to form a permanent organization or government officials, or a permanent organization of government officials to arrest counterfeiters. Okay, I'm gonna get it together, I promise. It's really early. 3 months later, the Secret Service was created. You know those men in crisp suits, dark sunglasses, and very serious expressions, always hanging out around the president? Well, that wasn't this Secret Service, at least not yet. The Secret Service's job was to go after counterfeiters, otherwise known as conniemen. One of the most talented counterfeiters was an engraver named Benjamin Boyd. His specialty was $5 bills, so perfect it fooled even experts. Boyd had a good run until October 21st, 1875, when the Secret Service caught and arrested him. Boyd was given a 10-year prison sentence. Boyd's arrest became a huge problem for a Chicago crime boss named Jim Kennelly, otherwise known as Big Jim. Big Jim worked as a middleman selling counterfeit money for half the price. Now with Boyd gone, the quality of counterfeit money went downhill. Criminals were not willing to pay what they had before, and that hurt Big Jim's business. He needed his counterfeiter back. That was when Big Jim came up with a plan, a kidnapping plan. But instead of kidnapping a live person and holding him for ransom, he would kidnap a corpse. And he would kidnap none other than Abraham Lincoln's corpse. He would then agree to return Lincoln's body in exchange for Boyd's release and $200,000. It sounds crazy, but the scheme was not going to be that hard to pull off. To start, no night watchman protected Lincoln's tomb. In fact, the only thing standing in the way of a thief in Lincoln's body was a padlock on a wooden door. All Big Jim needed was the right men to carry out his diabolical plan. He chose Terrence Mullen, a bow-legged, stocky man who kept a pet snake in a box and always had a pistol on his belt that he was not afraid to use. The second guy in charge was John Hughes, a sharp dresser with a thick, wiry beard and a long reputation as a counterfeiter. The third guy was probably not the best choice. He was Louis Sweggles, a baby-faced 20-year-old who always had some unbelievable story to tell of his life running from the law. So there's a picture of the three. He convinced Hughes and Mullen that he was the boss body snatcher of Chicago. Sweggles was really the boss roper or paid informant for the Secret Service. He was originally just trying to gather information on Hughes and Mullen's counterfeiting operations. He uncovered a much bigger plot. When Sweggles told the Secret Service of the body snatching scheme, they decided the only way to get evidence against the thieves was to arrest them in the act of stealing Lincoln's body. So on November 7th, 1876, Secret Service agents hid in the front vestibule area of the tomb, ready to catch the thieves. Meanwhile, Mullen and Hughes sawed off the padlock on Lincoln's tomb, cut open the end of the marble sarcophagus, and yanked out the lead-lined cedar coffin. Unfortunately, they had not anticipated Lincoln's coffin to be so darn heavy, so Mullen asked Sweggles to go outside and get their accomplice to bring around the wagon. But instead of getting the wagon, Sweggles gave the code word to arrest Mullins and Hughes. Seconds later, shots rang out. One of the Secret Service's men's gun had accidentally fired. Tipped off, Mullen and Hughes ran into the woods and avoided capture. Really? With the thieves on the loose, the custodian of the Lincoln Monument, John Carroll Power, worried that they would try to steal Lincoln's body again. So he and a few trusted men dragged the very heavy coffin, out of its marble sarcophagus and decided to put Lincoln where no one would look for him, in a hole in the monument's filthy basement. Unfortunately, when he started to dig the hole, he hit water. He couldn't stick Lincoln's coffin in muddy water, so instead he just threw some moldy lumber on top of it to make it look like a junk pile. As for Mullen and Hughes, they were eventually arrested a few months later and each served a 1-year sentence. The sentence was short because the Secret Service never really caught them in the act, and body snatching wasn't a crime in America. 2 years later, Power felt a tad guilty that our most beloved president sat in a pile of rubbish in a dank, dark basement. So he and a few men dug another hole in the basement where the water was not so high. And yet again, Lincoln was moved into another grave. Still in the basement, but at least below ground. Then they formed a Secret Service group called the Lincoln Guard of Honor and swore never to tell where Lincoln was buried. In 1887, probably still feeling guilty, they moved Lincoln's body out of the basement and into an unmarked location under the floor of the tomb's chamber. So there's a side note here. It says, by now you are probably losing count of the moves. Some historians count Lincoln's body as moving 17 times. But many of those moves were temporary moves that occurred on the same day. Let's just say for the sake of argument that he was moved a lot. Okay, let's see. Years passed and rumors spread that Lincoln was not in his fancy marble sarcophagus. In 1901, the Lincoln Guard of Honor decided that they needed a safer place for the body. Once again, Lincoln's body was moved. Of course, they couldn't resist taking a peek inside to make sure he was still there. Oh my gosh. The coffin was cut open. Sure enough, Abe was still there. He looked somewhat shrunken and a bit brown, had hair sticking up like a horse's, but other than that, he was not too shabby for a 36-year-old corpse. 36 years had went by. Lincoln was then put 10 feet below the monument's floor, encased in a steel cage and sealed in solid concrete. And that is where Lincoln remains today. Hopefully he is done moving. So there's a picture there, and there's the monument. So it says, the bodies of Lincoln, his wife, and his 3 youngest sons lie beneath a 117-foot granite obelisk in Oak Ridge Cemetery located in Springfield, Illinois. The grandiose structure is called the Lincoln Tomb, and the cemetery is the second most visited cemetery in the country. If you walk to one side of the Lincoln Tomb, you will find a giant dark bronze face of Lincoln. The first thing you will notice is that Lincoln looks like he is wearing sunblock on his nose. The golden colored nose happened over time from people rubbing it for good luck. And that's it. So hopefully you learned a little something today. And who knows how many times Lincoln actually moved. What do you think? Have a great day. See you next time.